Okay, we're recording here pertaining to an event that happened that I've been paying close attention to. Basically, another Martin Luther King has died pertaining to an individual that was standing up against the regime that Ronald Reagan, 30 plus years ago, declared as an evil empire before the Berlin Wall actually fell. If you would please bear with us in this event pertaining to this particular individual that has been known of protesting and been threatened, and been attempts has been made on his life towards death attempts by President Putin. But I want to say this before we get involved in this. The American government has never been against the Russian people. We have always stood with and behind the Russian people regarding the dictatorship, the evil government that has been dissolving, destroying, eradicating people's lives over there due to the fact of the way that the oligarchs want to rule and dictate and dominate over other people's lives. It's going to have to take a movement from within before they're ever going to be able to get rid of this type of evil, barbaric, evil empire, if you want to call it empire. Basically, their economy ain't but about the size of Texas. But to think that they have crucified this poor man, and they just didn't just up and kill him as far as hanging him or putting him in an electric chair or putting a bullet in his head. They done it in a very, very deceptive way, to the degree that now people are going to wonder what really happened. Already, listen to me, already Putin is blaming the West because of this man's death. Please give homage and a special tribute to this individual that was such of an activist. Like I said, he was another Martin Luther King. He was basically spearheading or pioneering a movement that a lot of people in Russia supported. A whole lot of people did. But because of the fear factor regarding their domination over their citizens over there, they really didn't get a real grand slam movement like he should have gotten. Please pray for the families, pray for the friends, and pray for the citizens of Russia that this demonic, evil government dictatorship will basically dissolve or be done away with. You know, whenever Putin went up against the Ukrainians, which was basically a David and Goliath scenario, that in and of itself spoke volumes about what kind of a group of people that would be willing to do this. And there's no doubt that certain people all over the world has been cheated because of what the so-called churches over here in the Western world did not do that they should have done in supporting the Windmill Ministries missions regarding the Antichrist, the one world government, the New World Order, the opening of the seals, the two witnesses, etc., as well as the teachings of the Lord Jesus Christ pertaining to mercy, love, forgiveness, grace, etc. Because the movement did not expand or accelerate the way that it should have had over here in America, we are now seeing the repercussions of what has occurred, of basically the reason why that it didn't occur. We're seeing the repercussions of it now on a scale unbelievable. Putin can say whatever he wants to say towards blaming other people. Putin can say whatever he wants to say pertaining to being a just, godly person. I think he's got Jewish descent in his bloodline. But the bottom line is this: he is working for a satanic, evil, demonic force. We have seen that again and again and again, the way that he bombed hospitals, maternity wards, schools, playgrounds, weddings, funerals, basically doing the exact same thing that the Saudi Arabians was doing before basically we shunned them in how that they was treating the Yemens. Evil people wants to dominate and be cruel to their own citizens. This government has never had a beef with their citizens. We have only had a beef with their government, the way that they brutalize and does not give their people a chance to become what they should become. Pray for the situation, and let's please listen to what's happening here.
Than your fear. And sometimes you need to somehow fight your fear and push against it and go forward. And my husband has always been such a person, and I will always stand by him and continue to fight with him in that, if that is what's needed of me.
Does the news, and you're right to say that it hasn't been confirmed by Navalny's family or his team, but if in fact it is, does the news of his death worry you about the safety of your husband, Vladimir? And when was the last time you spoke with him? Do you know how he's doing?
I believe that the news about Alexei's possible death have affected every single family of political prisoner in Russia. And because we all know what kind of repressive methods are being used by the authorities against those who refuse to be silent. And we know that these people are subject to all kinds of torture on a daily basis. And the lives of these people behind bars are indeed in great danger, as is the life of my husband. Last time, just before New Year's, at the end of December, Vladimir was allowed a 15-minute phone call with our kids. We have 3 kids, so that's 5 minutes each. And I was standing there with a timer because I couldn't let any one of them to speak to their father for longer than 5 minutes, because that would have taken time away from the other 2. And of course, I did not speak to Vladimir either, because I didn't want to take the time away from the kids. That was the first call, the 15-minute call in over half a year. Vladimir, on the 14th of February, we celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary. That was not the way we planned to celebrate it, but here we are. And Vladimir put in a request for a phone call with me, and the prison authorities responded that this was not an exceptional circumstance that would allow such a call. So I have not talked to my husband since last summer.
Wow.
That is just so hard to hear, and I am just with you and your children. I've met them before. They're a wonderful, beautiful family when you were all together, and I am praying, really, truly, Zhenya, praying for you all to be reunited very, very, very soon. My last question to you, in terms of the proper or most effective response to the now alleged reported death of Alexei Navalny, you heard from President Biden saying that would be Congress finally signing into law that legislation that provides some $60 billion in aid that Ukraine desperately needs right now in its war with Ukraine. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, and it should have been done yesterday. It should have been done without Alexei Navalny dying for this, because Vladimir Putin committed similar crimes in the past and got away with it every single time. Now, for 2 years, a war of aggression is being led in Ukraine, and people are dying on a daily basis. Civilians are dying on a daily basis, and Vladimir Putin is using all kinds of absolutely war techniques that are forbidden by, everywhere in the civilized world. So Ukraine has to be victorious in this war on Ukraine's terms, and that is crucial because maybe that will send a clear message to the Kremlin that Vladimir Putin and his government would no longer be allowed to get away with committing such atrocious crimes. The only thing this regime knows how to do is to steal, kill, and lead wars. And
Destroy.
this regime has to be stopped if we want peace to be restored and if we want repression to end.
Really strong words to end on. Evgeny Kara-Murza, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Biana.
And finally, the shock of Navalny's apparent death is clearly being felt across the globe. Aside from being a fierce advocate for Russian democracy, he was also a loving father and husband, who only 2 days ago, on Valentine's Day, tweeted a photo of his wife and wrote in Russian, "I love you more and more with all my strength." Alexei Navalny, 47 years old.
47.
Well, that is it for now. Thank you so much for watching. And goodbye from New York.
47 years old. Basically died as a martyr. Died for standing up for a good cause. Unbelievable.
Are you worried?
You know, whenever Ronald Reagan pegged them 30 plus years ago towards them being evil in the way that they treated their citizens and their whole mindset, he hit the nail right on the head.
Issa Suarez denied U.S. President.
He hit the nail right on the head. I want to say this. There's a lot of Russians over here in America that literally hate that government over there and hate hate what those people are having to go through because of that government over there. I actually rented from a Russian on Bellevue whenever I lived in Nashville, Tennessee in 2005, right before Katrina hit, and I wound up going down to southern Mississippi and working down there in the Katrina damage for almost a year. But I never had a problem out of this Russian girl at all. I'm pretty sure she probably wondered what was going on in my life, especially whenever Homeland Security, Secret Service wound up coming to the facility and wanted to check things out and look in the basement and look where I parked my truck and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure she was probably a little agitated over that. But as far as me personally, ever having any trouble out of her, never heard not one word. Now, granted, from time to time, because basically she took a house and renovated over to half of it to an apartment. I rented out half of it and she lived in the other half. It helped her get along pertaining to her mortgage. From time to time, she would be cooking some food over there that I don't think I've ever smelt that type of seasoning in that type of food. So there's no doubt they do eat different types of foods and season it in different types of ways than what the general American seasoning and food is. But other than that, I mean, I've never had a bit of trouble out of the lady. There's a lot of people that have sought refuge in getting out of Russia because of that evil, demonic empire that Ronald Reagan pegged 30 plus years ago.
Biden says he's outraged by the reported death of Alexei Navalny, and he's placing the blame squarely at the feet of Russian President Vladimir Putin. The Russian prison service says 47-year-old Navalny died while behind bars. Navalny was the leader of the biggest opposition movement in Russia, and for years a thorn in the side of Putin. His mother says she visited her son in prison this week, and he was, quote, healthy and cheerful. In a forceful message given moments ago, President Biden was clear where the White House stood on Navalny's death.
Make no mistake. Make no mistake. Putin is responsible for Navalny's death. Putin is responsible. What has happened to Navalny is yet more proof of Putin's brutality. No one should be fooled, not in Russia, not at home, not anywhere in the world. Putin does not only target his citizens of other countries, as we've seen in what's going on in Ukraine right now, he also inflicts terrible crimes on his own people. And as people across Russia and around the world are mourning Navalny today because he was so many things that Putin was not. He was brave, he was principled, he was dedicated to building a Russia where the rule of law existed and where it applied to everybody.
We've got these pictures just coming into us from Munich, Germany, where people there are holding a vigil for Alexei Navalny. We are seeing these vigils being held around the world. We will come back to those pictures and go to Munich in just a moment, where many world leaders are meeting for the Munich Security Conference. But right now, I want to go to CNN Chief International Correspondent Clarissa Ward, who joins us live from London. Good to have you with us, Clarissa. So, Alexei Navalny, of course, was known as Putin's #1 critic. According to the prison where he was being held, he is now dead. But the details surrounding his death are very vague. What are you hearing?
Well, we only have what we have heard from Russian state media, from prison officials, that he had gone for a walk, that he collapsed, that ambulance arrived on the scene, medics tried to revive him for half an hour, and that some kind of an investigation will now be carried out by medical personnel to try to determine the cause of death. But of course, to his friends, his loved ones, his followers, to Western leaders, ultimately the responsibility for his death is seen as lying at the feet of the Russian state, because he died in Russian custody. There is, of course, a question mark as to whether he was assassinated today, or whether possibly he died because of illnesses or complications that he was suffering as a result of the incredibly cruel and tremendously challenging conditions that he is being held in. We have heard repeatedly from his lawyers over the course of the last few years, as he has been moved into different penal colonies, that he has suffered, that he has had medical issues that have not been properly attended to, that he has been over-medicated with many different antibiotics at different stages. And so, of course, there is a real question mark hanging over as to what exactly happened, but very little question in the eyes of many as to who was ultimately responsible, Linda.
And Clarissa, we're just seeing some video now that we've got of Alexei Navalny taken the day before he died, this via video link. He seems happy. He seems to be joking with the judge. You've spoken to him in the past. We certainly have seen him look far worse than this when he's been on hunger strikes. How would you describe him in this vision?
He looks gaunt, certainly. He looks thin, but he appears energetic. He appears jovial. He's cracking jokes. He is sharing laughs with the judge and the guards even. We heard from his mother, Ludmila, who told Novaya Gazeta, the Russian publication, that she doesn't want to hear anyone's condolences because she saw him in prison on February 14th, and he was in good health, and he was happy. We saw him put out a message on Telegram to his wife, Yulia, wishing her a happy Valentine's Day, talking about how much he loved her. And that's why I think, even though people are not surprised by this, in the sense that the Russian state had tried to kill Alexei Navalny before with Novichok in August of 2020, there is still a level of shock. To go from seeing him just a day ago making jokes and smiling to suddenly and mysteriously being declared dead, is deeply troubling and deeply disturbing, even if, of course, it confirms the worst fears that many will have had.
Yeah, exactly. Clarissa Ward, good to have you on this story for us today. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, Alexei Navalny's wife, Yulia, is calling on the international community to fight what she calls Vladimir Putin's horrific regime. This is a part of what she had to say at the Munich Security Conference earlier today.
I want them to know that they will be punished for what they have done with our country, with my family, and with my husband. They will be brought to justice, and this day will come soon.
Well, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken met privately with Navalny's wife in Munich today to express his condolences on behalf of the United States. He says if reports of Navalny's death are true, it underscores the, quote, weakness and rot at the heart of the system that Putin has built. Blinken said the U.S. holds Russia responsible, a message echoed by Vice President Kamala Harris.
This is, of course, terrible news, which we are working to confirm. My prayers are with his family, including his wife, Yulia, who is with us today. And if confirmed, this would be a further sign of Putin's brutality. Whatever story they tell, let us be clear, Russia is responsible. And we will have more to say on this later.
Other Western officials at the Munich conference are also demanding accountability. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg says Russia has serious questions to answer. He called Navalny a strong voice for freedom. Germany's Chancellor also spoke out today in Berlin, saying Navalny paid for his courage with his life. Olaf Scholz slammed Putin's regime, with Ukraine's president standing by his side.
Nun auch ganz genau. We now, if we didn't already, know exactly what kind of regime this is. Anyone who voices criticism, who stands up for democracy, must fear for their safety and their lives. This is no longer a democracy, and has not been for a long time now.
CNN's Alex Marquardt is live for us from Munich, where he has been at that security conference. You've also been listening, obviously, to tributes and statements from officials and government leaders there. But we also heard from the US president a short time ago speaking about this. And just a few years ago, he warned about the devastating consequences for Russia should Navalny die in prison. What else did Joe Biden have to say, and what other repercussions could there be?
Yeah, the Biden administration has repeatedly called for the release of Alexei Navalny. President Biden speaking out about his reported death earlier today, saying in no uncertain terms that Putin and his thugs did it. That is the quote from the president. He said that he was not surprised, but that he is indeed outraged. And there have been, when we've heard these reactions, people are referring to the reports. There hasn't been independent confirmation, for example, by the United States, but President Biden saying clearly that he has no reason not to believe these reports, and that this is more proof of Putin's brutality. An interesting question about what could come next. There is a whole raft of U.S. sanctions that have been posed against Russia. Critics of the Biden administration say that several have not been enacted upon, so there's a question of whether that could happen, whether more sanctions could be imposed, whether the U.S. and Europe could take more action when it comes to seizing Russian assets around the world. But, Linda, I think a big question for the United States tonight is really about the funding for Ukraine. Of course, this has been stuck in the U.S. Congress, approved by the Senate, but not yet passed by the House of Representatives, this question of $60 billion for Ukraine. So a question for Republicans who are blocking this tonight is, with this reminder of the brutality of the Putin regime, President Putin, single-handedly responsible, essentially, for the imprisonment and now the death of Alexei Navalny, will Republicans act and give Ukraine that much-needed $60 billion as a bulwark against Russia, certainly as we approach the second anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine? Linda?
Yeah, exactly. And as you speak, Alex, we're just seeing some more vision of the vigils being held around the world, remembering the courage of Alexei Navalny, both in Munich and in London there on our screens right now. Alex Marquardt for us in Munich, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much. Throughout the day, we have been hearing outrage from the international community. But how is Navalny's death being seen inside Russia? Well, to answer that, I want to turn to our CNN contributor and our former Moscow bureau chief, Jill Doherty. She joins us live from Washington, D.C. Good to see you, Jill. Look, Russia obviously is responsible. That's what the UK and the US and many other leaders around the world are saying. What is being said inside Russia? Because I understand that the Russian parliament speaker took to his Telegram channel after the death was announced. What did he have to say?
Well, he's blaming it on the West.
Telegram channel. Because I understand that the Russian parliament speaker took to his Telegram channel after the death was announced. What he took to his Telegram channel after the death was announced. What did he have to say?
Well, he's blaming it on the West. I have to think exactly how he would explain that. But, I think what you have here is, let's look at the Kremlin. Okay, the biggest opponent of Vladimir Putin now is dead. So how does the Kremlin handle it? Well, people inside Russia actually, and I was very surprised to see this, have been coming out to the streets carrying flowers, not just in Moscow, but in other cities around Russia and outside of Russia, especially in Europe, where there are a lot of Russians who fled after the invasion of Ukraine in 2022. And they are laying flowers. We see some of the pictures here. And initially, when that happened, the police, most of the photographs we saw in the video looked like they were allowing that to happen. Now, in various cities, they are beginning to haul people away. Now they are taking the flowers away. So it's not clear how they're going to deal with this. But I think the whole meaning of that is that there are people who identify with not only with Navalny, but his message, who do support that, and who are willing to come onto the streets. But it's very, very dangerous to do that in Russia without being arrested. So what would the Kremlin do? I think they are very nervous about this upcoming presidential election. We'll talk more about that. But that is a re-election of Vladimir Putin coming in less than a month. And that is the most important.
The only thing I can say about their citizenship over there, it's a day late and $1 short regarding them having any type of empathy or sympathy for this spearheader pertaining to this individual that has recently died. The people are going to have to put aside the fear of what their officials could possibly do to them, even at the expense of a civil war in Russia. Because that's the only way that you're going to eliminate that type of atmosphere or that type of spirit that has been so deeply ingrained in their way of life now for the past, I guess, 500 years. To be able to change that overnight at a flip of a hat or on a dime is going to be extremely, extremely difficult. And until the people bond and unite, regardless whether they unite in this individual's movement in his life or bond in this individual's movement in his death, until they bond and show their oligarchs that they're not going to have to that they do not have to put up with this. They're going to have to put up with this endlessly, not only for themselves, but for their children and for their children's children and possibly even their grandchildren. And the fact of the matter is, whose fault it is, other than it being the secondary and the third dairy, goes back to the demonic Luciferian Lucifer, Satan, that masterminded 9/11, that lives over in Saudi Arabia. It is all their fault. It is all its or his fault. Because it was Lucifer that blinded the people, that deceived them, that has put us in this state that we're in right now towards basically the world that had been bamboozled. They have been bamboozled by this evil demonic entity that now we're seeing the repercussions of on every unimaginable level, unimaginable. And this is only one example to the onslaught. This is only one example to the onslaught. And I hate to say it, but, for the past 30 plus years, no, they didn't absolutely just pull out a gun and shoot me or put me in an electric chair or put a syringe in my arm that I know of or that I can prove. I do have my suspicions on what went on in my life while I was up in Washington, D.C. in 1989, after me dropping my son back off and going back up there for the second and third time, being in the same hospital that Hinckley was in. I think it was St. Elizabeth's Hospital or something like that there in Washington, D.C. Basically held me for 72 hours and then released me. That's whenever Homeland Security followed me from Washington, D.C., and basically went into my grandmother's house in Kenton, Tennessee, and questioned my mother, my grandmother, and my younger brother towards what the heck is going on with your brother, pertaining to the apocalypse model and all this other stuff that he had back in his truck. And of course, they explained it to him like this: well, that's what he believes. That's what my brother believes. My brother believes that that he's been touched of God towards being a messenger, towards bringing forth the message. Just so happens the majority of the people, the so-called Christian society over here, didn't want to support that. That's the reason why to this day I still laugh whenever they talk about peace, whenever they talk about unity, whenever they talk about a covenant, or whenever they talk about a treaty. I literally laugh in scornment in understanding that they only want to talk about peace, but in reality, they truly don't want peace. Because if they did, I promise you, somebody after 30 plus years would have been involved in Dennis James Jackson's life. That's the founder of the Windmill Ministries missions. There's no other way to cut it. I mean, proof is in the pudding, and what has occurred here is many times as I've been persecuted, slapped around, lied to, lied about, put in mental institutions. And to be quite honest with you, I think I've told you this before, looking at it from a different perspective, I would have been a lot better off if they would have went ahead and killed me, regardless whether it was one way or the other. I would have been a whole lot better off, because I wouldn't have had to have went through so much suffering. I wouldn't have had to have went through so much suffering. And if anything, that's probably the way that the world should look at this individual. At least he's no longer suffering. He's at peace with his Lord and Savior. People like Putin thinks that they're going to get away with this, and I guarantee you that we will follow people like this all the way to the gates of hell, towards making sure that they pay for what that they have done. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, but we're also the mouthpiece for the Lord before the Lord actually comes back and does what the Lord needs to do, which is basically knocking on heaven's door right now towards the inedible.
For them right now, for the Kremlin.
I want to get back to that, the fact that the election's coming up in just a moment, but I just want to play some sound from some people in Russia today mourning the death of Alexei Navalny.
Of course, Navalny is a symbol. First of all, a symbol of opposition, a symbol of hope for some brighter future for Russia. And there's a feeling that with his death, this hope dies. If there had still been any hope left, it is even less now than it was before.
I don't know. It's kind of a shock right now. It's even hard for me to speak now. We loved him.
Young, old.
I disagree with what she said, because odds are, throughout every movement pertaining to people like this, and you can go all the way back to the Lord Jesus Christ himself, that Jesus become a trillion zillion times more powerful after they've done what they've done to him as far as executing him than what his original ministry was during the time that he was living. And we can see that through other powerful leaders, regardless whether it's Martin Luther King, the JFK movement, even what happened in Adamsville, Tennessee, or down towards Savannah, Savannah, Tennessee, whenever they basically assassinated Buford Pusser, walking tall. Most individuals that are this high strung, their message becomes 1,000 times more predominant after their death than they ever thought about during their life. And that could be the very reason why that the United States government did not go ahead and assassinate me, because they knowed what the potential was once they done me in, that my message would actually become more powerful after my death than it would be during my life. I mean, I went out West to validate, to make sure that the ordeal that happened with the 51-day standoff was not associated any form or fashion pertaining to the Windmill Ministries missions. After me going out there and studying it and looking at it, going house to house, doing interviews with people, I found out that they had never ever heard of Dennis Jackson or the Windmill Ministries missions. So that freed my possible guilt. I'm going to use that terminology in the fact that maybe they freaked out whenever they heard about my message that become these doomsday preppers all of a sudden looking for the sky to fall. Because I found out for myself by rolling up my sleeves and doing journalist investigation work that they had no idea who Dennis Jackson was. Not whatsoever. So that helped to eliminate any type of possible guilt that could or would have been brought up into my heart or my consciousness in regards towards what went on out in Mount Carmel, Waco, Texas. But once more, we can see through the movement since the 1993 that was associated with the 1995, we can see through that movement that the words of Koresh pertaining to the opening of the seals, pertaining to the Bible, that he kept preaching, he kept waving the Bible at the news media people and preaching his message, basically prophesying his own death, and as well as his own followers' death pertaining to doomsday being upon him. His message has become more predominantly known or powerfuler after his death than what his life ever thought about being. And of course, to enhance that was what Timothy McVeigh and Nichols done to the Oklahoma Marion building, that I don't support pertaining to the vigilante tactics, but at the same time, you got to put credit where credit is due. And the fact of the matter is, what Timothy McVeigh and Nichols done only enhanced what David Koresh and his group of people was trying to get the message across. So between the two, and so many years has went by now that people has discussed it, they've looked at it, they've analyzed it, they've deciphered it, etc., etc., etc. The movement today is 1,000 times more powerfuler than what the movement was either before the 51-day standoff or even during the 51-day standoff. So yes, people's stories, people's fortitudes, people's seeds, people's movements does in fact become more clear and in lots of cases more powerfuler after their deaths than what their lives ever thought about. And that's a fact. You can look at that throughout other people throughout history. I'm going to just throw out another one real quick. I'm not all that smart whenever it comes to historical findings all over the world, but Nostradamus predicted that after he died, that the people that at the time was noted towards being grave robbers thought that they could dig his grave up and pour wine into his skull and drink the wine, and that those people was going to gain the knowledge that Nostradamus had. Keep in mind, Nostradamus wrote in quatrains for a reason. And the reason why he done this is because he knew that if the government officials there in that area ever found out what he was and who he was, he would have been executed probably on the spot. That was the whole primary purpose for him writing the quatrains. That way they couldn't understand what he was playing a part of. But regardless of what prophet, what called of God man or woman that has been called upon to God, they immediately recognize the seriousness of now you have chosen a side, the side of righteousness, the side of the Lord Jesus Christ, and because of it, you have true blue 100% enemies. It was that way then, And it's that way now. So whenever preachers tell you that if you give your heart and your life over to Christ, everything's going to be hunky-dory, that tells me that they're a false prophet or a false teacher in promoting false ideals to people, because I guarantee you, if you're true to your confession and if you're true to your dedication towards following after the Lord Jesus Christ, that's whenever every element and every demon in hell will come at you towards trying to dampen your faith in Christ, and once more be more of a follower towards sin than you are towards a follower of righteousness. I hate it for the family. I hate it for this guy. But you know what? Another good way of looking at it is that he's no longer suffering, because they put him in one of the coldest, one of the most heinous places in Russia, up towards Siberia, and just the conditions alone would be enough to basically kill you, even if he wasn't poisoned. Just the conditions alone, in addition to his body that couldn't take but just so much, after them poisoning him and doing him, probing him, probbing him, and messing with his mind and messing with his body. I'm really surprised that he lasted as long as he did. I'm really surprised at the age of 62 that I'm still here to be able to tell my side of the story. After me being probed and punched at and slapped on and violated and my officials bringing up all kinds of false accusations about me, and those that should have been protecting the property and the family down here that they didn't. I could go on and on and on. It's a thousand wonders. Just on a psychological, emotional, spiritual warfare grounds, it's a thousand wonders that I'm still here, much less all the other close encounters that my body has went through pertaining to close death, lifelong experiences.
Women, it seems like Alexei Navalny's reach was extensive.
It was. And, Linda, I have been on the streets of Moscow many times during protests in 2017, 2019, 2021, etc. Most of them were organized by the supporters of Alexei Navalny. And almost invariably, when I talk to young people, they wouldn't necessarily say, yes, we want Alexei Navalny to become the president of Russia. But really, some did. The essential idea is what that first woman said, which was another Russia, a better Russia, meaning a Russia without corruption. And for those supporters, they would say a Russia without Putin. So I think there are a lot of people in Russia right now who are shocked and who are wondering whether that hope is now extinguished or whether they have to live, lives of quiet desperation, waiting for a better Russia. Yeah. But it's a dangerous moment, I think. And
there will never be a better Russia until the people unite and come together towards going up against this evil, demonic regime. They can wait until the cows come home. They basically are a day late and a dollar short. Now they can take what this individual has already did, and they can move up onto it and build from his death. And I hope that is the case towards what occurs here. And if so, that's the proper way of going about neutralizing or desecrating a evil government like this, is from the inside out. Because I promise you, if we didn't go through our bloodshed here in America pertaining to our Civil War, even though it costed an American president's life, we would probably still be operating in the dark ages and trying to convince ourselves that what we was doing pertaining to slavery and pertaining to the black race was correct or right. So yes, sometimes it does take the ultimate sacrifice before you're ever going to be able to turn things around. I just pray that this man's works will not be in vain, and that the people over in Russia will move in a more united, positive way in eradicating that evil, demonic, cruel regime. But the bottom line, whose fault it is Satan, the Luciferian Lucifer. That's the one that you point your finger at. All these other people, they're just little figures. You got to go to the towering figure to see where the fault actually falls.
Moment, I think, an unstable and unpredictable moment in Russia.
Yeah, but interesting, those people are speaking so freely about that. And also, you mentioned the timing of this. With an election in Russia happening next month, we already know that multiple candidates who wanted to run have been barred from running in the election. What does all this say, and the timing of Navalny's death, say about the mindset of Vladimir Putin?
Well, I think it's very clear that the Kremlin does not want any, let's call it, viable candidate. There will be other candidates. I think there will probably be about 4 on the ballot, including President Putin, but none of them make any difference other than Putin. So the one person who was against the war, who was quite obviously against Putin's running the war, was eliminated from the ballot. He's still trying to fight it. There's no way he'll get on. And so people now are being urged by Navalny's supporters and others to simply vote for whoever, but don't vote for Putin. So again, that election, the image of a democratic election is what the Kremlin wants to get across, not just to the international world. I think, quite honestly, Linda, they've given up on the rest of the world, or at least the Western world. And they're more concerned about their own citizens, whether they can get them out to vote, and whether they can get them to vote for Putin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he doesn't seem to care about what the rest...
I'm hearing this lady pertaining to Putin and the Western world, but I don't doubt it, because even to this day, in 2024, what is it, day after Valentine's Day, a lot of these ministers, a lot of these preachers, especially in this area, would give anything if I was to go to their sanctuary and all of a sudden they started treating me like a human being, and the next thing you know, instead of me converting them in what that I've been teaching and preaching for the past 30 years, they would still be wanting to turn me around. Kind of like a psychiatrist. Well, let's get him to lay on a bed over here, and maybe we can get him turned around. Maybe we can get him off this course. That's what I've been fighting up against the whole time. And that's the reason why the Windmill Ministries does not have a congregation, or does not have a predominant support team. Like I said, they'll tell you that they want peace, but they'll be involved in watching all kinds of gory, ungodly movies. They'll be involved in doing all kinds of ungodly things. These ministers, a lot of them, they know what their congregations are up to and what they're doing, but yet now they don't nobody preach and step on nobody's toes, because if they do, well, at the end of the week on Sunday, they may not get the contributions that they're looking for. Or, better than that, they may just run them plumb out of town and say, you know what, you need to go preach somewhere else, buddy. Well, we're not going to listen to you. Once more, they're preaching a false doctrine to a group of people that was led by the leadership, and basically took it hook, line, and sinker all the way to the bank. You wonder what's wrong with our government? You wonder what's wrong with the people all over the world? You got it. The blind lead the blind. They both shall leadeth off into the ditch. That's what Christ said. That's what Jesus said. Like I said, there's a lot of these people around here, and I think a lot of them, they are so asphyxiated with their own reality that they wouldn't know the truth if they was to stumble over it. And in some disheartening way, they actually feel like that they have done Dennis Jackson justice by not supporting Dennis Jackson, by not getting in behind the Windmill Ministries, even though you can look at my life with all the events that's happened in my life. It has been brutal to my body. I mean, just within the past 3 weeks, 3 weeks and 3 days, 2 days, whatever it is, I've had a left ankle fusion. My left ankle had to be fused. Why did it have to be fused? Because of a old prior injury of me falling off a building in 1979. If I had my way, the Windmill Ministries would have been supported. We would have seen that revival revolutionary movement. There would have been temporary peace and utopia. And I would have already walked up to the individual that I've already walked up to before, or he walked up to me over here in Martin, Tennessee, and tell him that the time has come for him to surrender and put his weapons down. And if he doesn't surrender to me, and I do die during this moment, good riddance. Because the Bible says to be absent from the Bible is the body is to be present with the Lord. Once more, my suffering would have already ended. But they didn't want me to defeat Satan. They wanted me to go through the pain and the agony. They didn't want peace. They didn't want true, godly, wholesome, authentic peace. They'll tell you that they did. And I'm not saying that all of them are given this false entity. But for the most part, especially whenever it comes to the politics, it don't matter if it's a judge, it don't matter if it's a congressman, it don't matter if it's a probation officer, it don't matter if it's a sheriff. In reality, they don't want peace. You know why? Because first of all, there ain't no fun in peace. Second of all, if there was peace, we would have to shut down a lot of these agencies that works for the public, because there wouldn't be no need for them. Probation officers, they wouldn't make their money that they're making now. Sheriffs that basically subcontract these sheriff offices out. Judges wouldn't make their money. Lawyers wouldn't make their money. Counselors wouldn't make their money. I could go on and on and on towards what kind of a racket that they've turned it into. So when they tell you that they want authentic, genuine, godly peace, they are lying to you. Beginning right here in Weakley County, Tennessee, Northwest Tennessee, they are lying to you. Because if they did, I would have already seen a movement, especially putting out as many videos as I put out now. I give or take, I think over 5,000 videos. Some of them may not be 15 minutes long, but the majority of them are an hour long, and some of them even 3 hours long. That's a lot of material you put out to the general public. But still, yet no, I don't get no telephone calls. Hadn't had nobody knocking on my door telling me, what can we do for you, Juby? We want to support you, Juby. What do you want us to do? Have I seen my mailbox stuff full of mail? No. Absolutely not. And besides that, I think it was Osteen or some kind of person like that was involved with an island pertaining to sexual affairs that just up miraculously, and they claimed that he hung himself, but yet no, there wasn't no video. Wasn't no video of the guy killing himself, and even Donald Trump said the day after that they killed him, because he knew too much pertaining to all these other high-ranking officials. Don't think that America is not working on the same pretenses, because I guarantee you, if you're running for sheriff and you're the wrong person with the wrong group of people supporting you, you liable to wind up with your automobile down here at the river and it being caught afire and you be in it. Look what they done to Martin Luther King in Memphis, Tennessee. Look what they done to Walking Tall pertaining to Buford Pusser. It goes on. Governments are very unfair whenever it comes to their citizenship. It just so happens that Russia's is a whole lot more dirtier than what America's is. But whenever it comes to fair play, whenever it comes to good play, I ain't got no telephone call from Biden pertaining to the apocalypse, Armageddon. I ain't got no telephone call from Donald Trump pertaining to if I was to support him, he would support me. I haven't heard nothing like that out of none of these politicians. A matter of fact, I can't even get the judge or the courthouse up here to admit to their wrongs. And as far as I'm concerned, the very thing that's going on right now in Atlanta towards trying to debar that prosecutor should be the very thing that's happening right up here in Dresden, Tennessee. They should be having a hearing, a state hearing on how things was handled, not only in my life, but basically that caused the death of my youngest brother. Have I heard of any type of hearing going on in Dresden, Tennessee pertaining to this? Is Tommy Moore's occupation pertaining to his livelihood? Has it been in jeopardy anyway towards him losing his job and no longer getting his $100,000 a year? Have I heard of Johnson? Anybody challenging him in court to basically have a hearing on how things was handled inappropriately, especially after your own attorney stands in front of the judge and say, Your Honor, Mr. Jackson was not aware of the court date. So that lets me know, because I haven't heard of these things, because there has not been a movement, especially with all the material that's went out, they are full of crap. And the bottom line is people that are either scared of people like the guy that owned the island pertaining to all the immoral sexual activity pertaining to the teenage pedophiles, or even people like myself, or people like Martin Luther King, or people like Buford Pusser. They're scared of people like us. They're frightened to death of people like us. So I want Northwest Tennessee especially, I'm really talking to America right now, especially the younger generation. Whenever your factory don't come to your neighborhood, whenever this don't happen that you felt like it should happen, or whenever this that is happening don't get stopped from happening, you have no one to blame but yourselves, because you took the bait, hook, line, and sinker pertaining to the elders or the baby boomers, the Grateful Dead followers that led us all down this road, that even to this day I still don't see no movement, even out of the youth, even out of the people that's in their 20s or 30s or even 40s. I still don't see a movement there. And they're the ones that's not only going to be the one to pay the ultimate price, because all them baby boomers and all them elderly people, they're at the point of them already dying. They're not going to have to live much longer to put up with all this grief and all this horror. But those in their 50s will. Those in their 40s sure enough will. And those in their 30s and their 20s is sure enough going to put up with a whole lot more grief and horror and sorrow. So if you can't get a movement, if you can't rally the people after 30 plus years of basically promoting the same message hadn't changed from the messenger, you pretty well get an idea towards where the general public stands. Now, is it because they're ignorant of the facts? Well, hopefully that's it. But then again, you know good and well there has to be people out there that knows the truth, but just refuses to act upon it. Now, why they refuse to act upon it? Maybe it's the same reason why the citizens over in Russia refuses to act on it. Maybe they feel like that they're going to jeopardize what they already got. And maybe it's going to take these countries to actually hit total rock bottom, to the point of massive starvation, massive whatever, before they're going to finally wake up. Well, in the meantime, the people over in Russia, their citizens, they're starting to wake up and realize, my God, we had our golden chance right here, and we lost it. We blowed our opportunity towards supporting somebody that we actually loved and believed in. But because of whatever reason, they chose to put their hands up underneath their hips, remain silent, and now the horrors are intensifying in their lives, just like the horrors are intensifying in the innocent people's lives all over the world. And until we're willing to speak truth to power and act upon it, you're going to continue to be grief-stricken by all these people that has taken advantage of the system and taken advantage of, guess what? Our future and our children's future and our children's children's future. They have stolen that from them. And until we're willing to wake up to that, and until the people over in Russia is willing to wake up to that, they're only going to deal with the same old, same old. I promise you, coming near a neighborhood near you that's only going to intensify towards getting worse before it ever even thinks about getting better. And I would say that to the president of China. I would say that to the president of Honduras or Colombia or Brazil or Chile or Mexico or any other country. These dictators, these oligarchs, are going to have to be put down before we're truly going to basically see Luke 8:18 come true. For whenever God comes back, shall he find faith here upon to the planet. Because I promise you, if he come back right now, there would probably be less than 1% of 0.5% that would actually go up in the second coming. The rest of them would be left down here during the Great Tribulation period. And I know a lot of people that listen to this, they're going to say, wow, ain't that man off his rocker? Ain't that man off his rocker? No, I guarantee you, people that had just a small amount of faith pertaining to believing in the Lord Jesus Christ whenever they was in their 50s is one thing. You let them get up into their 60s and they start looking at all the aches and the pains and the arthritis and the bursitis and all the other problems that their body's going through. And you know what? All of a sudden, heaven don't look that bad now, does it? Or the hope of heaven don't look that bad. And you let them get on up into their 70s and their 80s with their aches and their pains and their arthritis and bursitis and every other kind of itis. And that's basically whenever they start saying, you know what? We would have been better off to have followed that person, even at the expense of death. Because it would have been a whole lot more pleasurabler with the body than to go through day after day after day of endless sorrow and pain. That's what's frightening about all this, is that even to this day, those same people that resisted, that was part of the resistance movement with the Windmill Ministries missions, I still don't hear nothing out of them. Those same people that I went to church with for over a year and a half over in Kenton, Tennessee, that I prayed with, read the Bible with, studied with, worshiped with, have I gotten any type of restitution coming from that family? The Neal family over there? Or some of them other people over there in Kenton, Tennessee, that were basically the core of origin of the seed of discontent, or the seed of rebellion started since 1983? Have I heard anything out of those folks? Nope. You know why? Because they're two-faced. That's why. Based around the analogy that a good person can make a mistake, but it takes a better one to admit it. I can't find no people in Northwest Tennessee that's willing to admit it to any of their mistakes, including Tommy Moore, including Johnson, including Tommy Thomas or Mike Wilson, or some of these other clowns that's been sitting and basically panhandling off of the will of the people. One day, it may not be in this lifetime. It may take the lifetime to come, but one day they're going to give an account for lots of people's lives towards either what they done or what they didn't do that they should have done. Now, People like Tommy Thomas, that's already retired. People like Marvin Alexander, that was our state senator. People like Mike Wilson, they're probably sniggering and laughing. Ha 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 ha! That guy, he's still crazier than a damn Betsy Bug, isn't he? Well, you can laugh all you want. You can mock me. You can degrade me. You can demoralize me. You can demonize me all you want. Because I know what I know that I know. And one day, there's going to be a big round table called the White Throne Judgment. And there's going to be lots of serious questions asked. And in the process of those questions being asked, Mr. Neil, as well as Kay and Faye, and the rest of those people over there that basically planted the seed of rebellion, I just hope and pray you have some very serious answers to some very serious questions, because I promise you, it's coming, and it's coming near a neighborhood near you. And if it don't happen in this lifetime, it will happen in the lifetime to come. You haven't escaped. You haven't gotten away with this. You're not going to get away with this. And you can call me a bad guy, because I went up into the woods and I prayed the prayer that I prayed towards no longer blessing these heathens, but God, put your wrath upon to them towards cursing them, because that's what they deserve. Now, they thought that they was going to outwit me. They thought that they was going to outpower me. They thought that they was going to outlast me. They underestimated me. They had no idea that I would actually go up into the woods and touch the throne room of God. And now, look what they have brought upon us. Well, you know what? I still blame them. You know why? Because if they would have done what they was required to do,
In the West.
going all the way back 30 plus years ago, beginning in Kenton, Tennessee, beginning in Northwest Tennessee, I wouldn't have had to went up into the woods and prayed those prayers towards God, bring your destitution and your wrath down upon these people. If they would have done what they should have done, I wouldn't have had to have done what I done. So, be it as it may, I was provoked. And you can say whatever you want to say, but it was the devil and the devil's people that provoked God to the degree that God had to show his ugly side versus his good side. And there's no doubt, God's got both. He's got grace, he's got love, he's got mercy, but he's also got restitution. He's also got a personality that goes the other way, especially if you're non-pleasing to the Father. God is not going to continue to feed a group of people that continues to bite the hand that's feeding them. You wouldn't do it. Nobody else would do it. And if you're expecting God or God's people to do it, you're expecting for us to be your fool. We're not your fool. We're not your punching bag. We're not your floor mat. And we're not your whipping post. There comes a time, just like what the president in Jerusalem's doing, which, you know what, I hate it that all them people are suffering. I really do, especially the children and the elderly people. I hate it. I hate it to no earth's end, and I'm sure that the president of Israel would tell you the same thing. He hates it. But now he's caught in between a hard place and a rock. That he knows that if he does not go ahead and end it towards desecrating this evil that's been doing this now for thousands of years, that it will never be desecrated. And once more, you cannot conform the devil and the devil's people. Only thing that you can do to the devil and the devil's people is to let them know that you're on the right side of history with God, and God himself will bring retribution down upon that society. And until those people are willing to stand up over there in Hamas and go against the Hamas people, they're going to continue to suffer. They're going to continue to be brutalized, and you're going to continue to hear horror stories coming out of the Middle East. Just like the people over in Russia. They have went through a retribution coming from their own government, unlike anything that they probably ever thought that they would ever have to go through. They've read about it. You know, they're not stupid people. They've read about history. They know about their own history. They know about Europe's history. They know about Poland's history. But now it's beginning to come home to them. Now they're beginning to feel it. Whenever they go to the bank, now McDonald's is no longer there. Now all these other American companies are there. They're feeling the pinch. Well, guess what? They're going to feel the pinch a whole lot more if they continue not to do the proper thing pertaining to ending that regime over there. That once more has to be done from the inside out. Has to be done from the inside out. Jesus said, don't worry about the outward appearances pertaining to the cup. Clean the inside of the cup pertaining to the heart, and the outside will basically take care of itself. We're in a fix. And we're in a fix because of the devil and the devil's people. No ifs, ands, buts about it. We are in a fix. Not just as Americans, not just as Russians, not just as Middle Easterners, but the world. The world right now is in a fix. And if you can't understand that, either you're incapable of understanding this, or you're actually part of the problem versus the solution to it.
To have you with us as always, Jill Doherty for us from DC. Thank you. Well, two different legal cases, one huge day for Donald Trump. Any moment now, a judge is expected to rule in Trump's civil fraud trial in a decision that could potentially take down the Trump family business in New York.
See, it's not what you do, but how you do it. And I've always been taught you pick and choose your fights, and you pick and choose the time frame or the method of your fight. These jerks around here, and I'm not calling everybody that. Please do not misunderstand my words, because I know that there was a lot of people that got caught up into this ignorantly that was not truly aware of the sincerity of the founder of the Windmill Ministries. So there's a lot of people that got caught up into this because they wasn't that biblically inclined. But there was a whole lot of them that was, and still there was a rebellion. Still there was a rebellion that has now led to where we are today. Those same people that was ignorant then are no longer ignorant today. They know the truth. They know what happened. Are they persecuting and prosecuting the people that stood in front of them, that made these unrational decisions that's now made it hard on everybody's life? Have they decided to stand with Dennis James Juby Jackson pertaining to the Windmill Ministries? If so, I ain't heard them. I ain't seen them. Is this some sort of a dream that I'm living in, or hallucination that I'm living in? Whenever I say that the Windmill Ministries does not have true supporters pertaining to a Joe Osteen congregation, which I think Joe Osteen has, I don't forget now how many millions of people that his viewing range is. I think it's way on up there, something like 20-something million people, or maybe even more than that, people that want to hear what Joe Osteen's got to say. They love Joe Osteen. They support Joe Osteen. They're willing to send Joe Osteen some money and to send him a postcard and a birthday card and a Christmas card and tell him how much that they think about him. Have I gotten anything like that from Northwest Tennessee? I can't even get an apology from the people that brought death and destruction into my younger brother's life. Much less to see people moving in the right direction pertaining to the Neal family or any other family over in Kenton, Tennessee that wanted to judge Lucille Jordan's family based on what one of her sons done. I've never seen so much hypocrisy. I've never seen so much two-face. Once more, it's not what you do, but how you do it, Donald Trump. You may have had good incentives. You really did. You seen this coming. You seen what the calamity coming around the corner, and you was trying to prevent it from happening in every aspect way that you could. But you used the wrong tactics at the wrong time. And now society is making you, Donald Trump, walk the plank. That's what they're doing. And I told you that this would occur, that they would turn on you like a biting dog. I truly believe that we right now would probably still be under Donald Trump's ruling, whether or not it's good or bad, if COVID never hit. Because Donald Trump and Donald Trump's cabinet members really turned it around in comparison to the knuckleheads that was before him, like Obama, the Clintons, the Bushes. I could go on and on, all the way down to the assassination of JFK if you want me to. And I don't know if it's the fact that I'm too broad-minded in having a good memory about all these things towards being able to put not just part of the dots together, but all of them, going all the way back into the early 60s, or it's the fact that I'm talking to people that's so narrow-minded that I'm actually talking over their heads. I don't know what it is. I don't know if I'm too broad-minded or they're too narrow-minded. I just know this, that even to this day, I haven't seen a spiritual revival movement that God ordained me to take a part of, to help orchestrate. I still have not seen that. And the bottom line is this, and I want the youngsters to pay close attention to what I'm fixing to say. In this particular area, Northwest Tennessee, you have starved any type of prosperity for their future down the drain. In other words, we could have had a whole empire right here. Just about everywhere I've went where there's been a mighty movement of God, there has been a strong, fundamental support team around that church or around that ministry, regardless whether it was in Kansas City, Missouri, where the ministry out there pertaining to IHOP Ministries, that had a big movement that supported the whole neighborhood. You can go down there to Jackson, the Lighthouse Pentecostal Church. They've actually got a whole community down there named in the streets of the Bible. Jeremiah, Genesis, Deuteronomy Street, Chronicles, First Ephesians. You know why? Because there was a movement. People bonded. They pulled together. They didn't pull together down here. They didn't pull together down here whenever my great-grandfather was a community organizer that basically died right before the Cydonia School shut down and the rest of the whole area shut down because the railroad, fortunately, went up through Martin, and boy, did everybody follow the railroad. Just like everybody followed the rivers at one time. And because of it, now all these other people had to starve out. There wasn't a movement that my grandfather started for the benefit of this community, going all the way back to the early, basically to the mid-1900s. Today, the characteristics are still the same. I still don't see a movement. All I see is sorrow, despair, agony. I go to Kenton. There's 3 or 4 buildings over there that used to supply 200 or 300 people in each building towards labor forces. They're dormant. They're dead. Just like Donald Trump said, whenever you fly over them with an airplane, it looks like tombstone. Something that used to be alive that now is dead. You can go to Sharon, Tennessee. Same thing. Rutherford, Bradford, even Dyer, Medina, all these other little areas that have basically died up. Dried up and died up. Because of why? Old money, old ideals, people that wasn't willing to compromise, that thought that they was right all along, and the whole time instead of them being right, they was wrong. They was wrong. So maybe it is going to take a civil war to get it straightened out. Maybe it is going to take a bloodbath. Maybe we are going to have to see the devil and the devil's people rule before God's people actually tries to divert or go up against that plan of action. I want to say God bless America. I'm really very sympathetic towards this individual that has now recently died. I'm really surprised that he's lasted this long towards the conditions that he's went through, just like all the other godly people, godly women, godly men that had stood up for the ways of righteousness, and society had a way of knocking them down, pushing them down. We don't want to hear nothing you got to say. We don't want to. We don't want to. We don't want to support you. We don't want to be around you. We don't want to hear anything about you. We think that you're a fanatic. We think of this. We think of that. And now look at your community. Now look at everything else that's going on in the area. It goes from bad to worse, worse to bad, from now even worser to badder. So you have to ask the question: when will the movement, the real revival movement, take place?
You saw businessman, government official Berezovsky hanged in a locked bathroom. Then, of course, there was Alexander Litvinenko, who he was a former Russian security agent who defected. He was poisoned and later died. And Anna Politkovskaya, who was poisoned and then shot. She was a journalist and a former human rights activist. And of course, more recently, Evgeny Prigozhin, who had a falling out with Putin. He was known as Britain's chef. He had a falling out. Then, of course, he fell out of the sky in a plane. You, Matthew, have covered so many of these cases. And now it seems Navalny is the latest in a very long list. What was your reaction when you first heard of his death today?
And you can add to that list of names all the people that fell in suspicious circumstances out of windows over the past couple of days as well in Russia. Defenestration has become a sort of prominent cause of death, it seems, when it comes to opponents of the Kremlin and people who call them foul of it. And when you look at that list, it sort of kind of reaffirms, doesn't it, that even though it's shocking, this death of Alexei Navalny, nobody expected it. He'd been locked away in a Siberian penal colony. He was not really that relevant anymore when it comes to the day-to-day sort of politics of Russia, at least inside Russia he wasn't anyway. But it shows you that actually it fits into a pattern of behaviour that we've been observing over the past 20 years or so in Russia, where if you become a prominent critic of the Kremlin or of Vladimir Putin in particular, then you meet these sticky ends. And that's the category, unfortunately, that Alexei Navalny has now fallen into. And I think the big question is, what will the reaction be on the streets of Russia? In the past, Navalny has been able to call out tens of thousands of people in towns and cities across the country. Will those numbers come out now in protest at his death, or will this send a further chilling effect on opponents of the Kremlin, critics of Vladimir Putin in Russia, and encourage them to stay home or leave or just be quiet with their criticism?
Yeah, and of course, Matthew, despite the fact that he was in prison and many times in solitary confinement, he was still able to, on occasion, use social media or get his team to campaign on his behalf and to oppose things that were happening at the hands of Vladimir Putin. Is there anyone that can take his place right now in that role?
Well, no one individual, I don't think. I mean, Alexei Navalny was, unique in the sense that he was...
Goes back to the old cliche, you don't miss the water till the well runs dry. That's the reason why I've said what I've said. Sorry about me having to raise my voice because of all the rain. I don't know if it was hailing or it was just big drops of rain, but I had to move my slider in a little bit, and now it's quit raining, so I don't have to talk near as loud. Almost sounded like it was coming a storm, a real storm. But you don't miss the water till the well runs dry, and I've asked that before. who's gonna take my place? Who's gonna be willing to sacrifice their lives in a way that the founder of the Windmill Ministries have had to sacrifice his life for the past 30 plus years toward being harassed, violated, dehumanized, demonized, and all the above. After I'm dead and gone, who's going to take my place? Or is there anybody going to take my place? Because one day I will be dead and gone. I'm not Superman. I'm not going to live forever. Now, does that mean that society today in the Western world has missed their opportunity? Not as long as I'm living. As long as I'm still living, there's always a chance that I could actually see that movement that would be delayed 30 plus years because of these knuckleheads. But there still could be a grand movement if the younger generation would quit being scared. But yet, no, they've got them so drugged up and so messed up that now they're afraid that if they say anything or do anything, that life's going to become even more harder for them than what it already is. I don't see how it can be any more harder for a lot of these younger kids around here in their 20s and 30s and even their 40s than what it already is. Now, if you want to do like my son and go to Denver, Colorado, or you want to move all over the countryside towards following the money, chasing the cheese, well, then good luck to you. Once more, it's the grandparents and the mothers and fathers that usually has to sacrifice on account of that, because now you don't have a relationship with your granddaughters and your grandsons like you ordinarily would have had if you had those factories down here going in Kenton, Tennessee. If you had a factory or two still going over here in Sharon, Tennessee. If you had some sort of work ethics to where people wouldn't have to chase the cheese all over the countryside and evolve and move off, migrate into other parts of the country just to be able to bring home a check and pay their mortgage and keep the lights on and pay their automobile off. You don't miss the water till the well runs dry on every occasion, under every category. I knew whenever David Jeffrey Jackson, my younger brother, died, of what type of brunt that was going to be in my life towards an empty void. And for these idiots, I'm just going to call it like I see it, those that are guilty of what I'm talking about, to come out here and falsely accuse me of me killing my own brother, only speaks volumes about their intelligence. Only speaks volumes about who that they truly are. Because they was so blind that they couldn't understand the peer pressures that they was bringing upon to David Jeffrey Jackson's life, including my own, that if there was any way that I could prosecute them and put them in jail today, including Tommy Moore, including Johnson, including Tommy Thomas, and prior Sheriff Mike Wilson, if there was any way that I could do this and validate it and make it look authentic, in which I know it's authentic, but prove to the public that it's authentic, I would do so. I would go out here and hire an attorney. But to get an attorney to say, well, this is all superficial stuff that you're talking about. Really? Really, it's all superficial? How come is it then that a psychiatrist can take somebody that's been bullied or that peed in the bed, and little Johnny got talked to bad, or he had bad raising pertaining to his parenthood, and little Johnny goes out here and kills a bunch of people, and now all of a sudden, because the psychiatrist is a smooth silver talker, little Johnny don't get the capital punishment pertaining to the death sentence that little Johnny actually deserves to get, based upon emotions, based upon psychological bearings. How come is it that the system can protect its own, even though those that it's protecting don't need to protect. But then the other perspective pertaining to the godly can't get nobody to stand in their corner. And this hasn't just happened to me, my friends. This has happened across the board to thousands and millions of born-again Christians again and again and again. This is part of that persecution package that Jesus talked about that said, if they hated me, they will also hate you. They hated me coming back to Weakley County, Tennessee, and the Obion County, Tennessee, and the Northwest Tennessee area. They hated the fact that they'd done already burnt the bridges by degrading me, downing me, dehumanizing me the way that they did. And now they've all run off into their little piggy holes. They've gone secluse. Don't hear a word out of them. Well, I can say this about it. At least 7 out of 10 that I meet on the highway, most of the time, they don't shoot me birds like they did whenever I first moved back here. For the first 2 years, up until basically it got so raw that my brother died, about 7 out of 10, whenever I'd meet them on the road, it didn't matter if it was a major highway, it didn't matter if it was a country highway, it didn't matter if it was a secondary road, they would shoot me a bird or shake their fist at me and tell me, we hate you, Juby. We hate you, Juby. And maybe they just didn't come right out and say, I hate you. But it was their actions in what that they was displaying. Just like in Weakley County courts. It was their actions in what they was not displaying towards taking care of the family that lived at 430 Beech Grove Road or 291 Thompson Road. I may not be the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I guarantee you I was not born yesterday, and the people that engaged in this activity, either directly or indirectly, either towards what they done or what they didn't do that they should have done, they will give an account for this one day. Just like the bastard Putin and his bastard evil empire over there pertaining to the oligarchs. And it's not just this life. It's millions of other lives that they have destroyed. Millions. And it's not just the Ukrainians. That evil, demonic influence needs to be stomped out. Needs to be put out. Even if it takes a civil war to do it. But it's got to start from within. It's got to start from the own core of origin pertaining to their own people. If not, you're going to wind up just like the Afghanistan people did. And right now, I guarantee you, them women and them children are cursing their men. And their men is feeling those cursings because they did not have the you-know-what to stand up against the very group of people that we was at war with. Now, I can't get it no straighter than that. I can't make it no plainer than that. I can't get it no straighter than that. And if you don't understand that, it's because either you are incapable of understanding that, or once more, you are part of the problem versus the solution to it. There's going to be a lot of people over in Russia. Yeah, they're going to put flowers out. Yeah, they're going to put on this slow song and dance about how we're going to regret this individual and how that we loved him and all this other stuff. But it goes back to what Miss Lucille Jordan told her grandkids. Not only about that we was going to be treated different because of what one of her sons done, but she looked at all of us and said, if you can't send me flowers while I'm living, for God's sakes, don't send me none whenever I'm dead. Don't be playing on my emotions towards acting like that you really and truly cared about me whenever you know darn good and well that you didn't. Because if you did, you'd have brought me those flowers whenever I was living. You would have asked me if there was anything that you could do for me, or how can we help you. You would have been kind to me. Instead of shooting me a bird, you would have been waving a peace sign at me. Instead of being distant and cold and giving me the cold shoulder down aisle 4, you would have actually stopped and wanted to converse and talked and wanted to know how you doing, how's things going, and being just regular people being regular people. You wouldn't go live off in a secluded seclude somewhere like a spider, dig a hole somewhere. There's an ass whipping coming to this world like this world has never seen before. And I guarantee you, all these people that are doing all of this to God and God's people, we're going to chase those people to the very gates of hell because of what that you have done to us down here. Because if you think for 1 second that you've gotten away with it, that just speaks volumes about your intelligence. It speaks volumes about how idiotic and how truly foolish that you really are by thinking that you're going to get away with this. And I ain't just talking about my life right now. I'm talking about all lives since the beginning of time pertaining to the evil, bullying, demonic, cruel people that have been mean and cruel to God's people. Once more, I can't make it no plainer than that. As my grandmother said, if you can't send me flowers while I'm living, don't send them to me whenever I'm dead. Don't send me no flowers whenever I'm dead, acting like something that you're not, or acting like that you had feelings about me that you're not. My grandmother, Miss Lucille Jordan, was a straight shooter, and a lot of people didn't like that in her, but there was a whole lot of people that did like that in her. She had a strong backbone, and she remained strong until the day she died, just like her father, Jesse James, that was kin to the Jesse James gang up in Kansas, Missouri, Liberty, Missouri, where our people is buried, Jesse and Frank. They had a strong backbone. They had a strong push, a strong drive. It just so happens that those boys was kind of like Donald Trump. They used the wrong tactics at the wrong time. There will come a time to where God's people will be able to vindicate themselves by doing the proper and right thing under the command and the order of the Heavenly Father. Because I guarantee you, whenever God tells me, whenever He sends me on an assignment in the spirit world, and He says, go after them, I'm coming after you. And we're going to make sure that you dip in the flames of fire again and again and again. Sevenfold of what you've done to all of us. Sevenfold of what you've done to us. Two wrongs don't make a right. What Donald Trump done and how he done it was wrong. What the Jesse James, Frank James gang done up in Liberty, Missouri was wrong. They used the wrong tactics at the wrong time. People are going to have to start holding the people accountable that we put in power to protect us and not neglect us. I just put out a thing this past 24 hours ago of recording something on C-SPAN. If you hadn't watched it, I strongly recommend you to watch it, because it's very, very strong in how many points that these individuals make. And they all can't be lying. Somebody say, well, you're lying. No, I ain't lying. I'm just imagining. I just have a strong imagination. Really? A lie is a lie. Don't matter if it's a cold-faced lie. Don't matter if it's a bald-faced lie. Don't matter if it's just a little lie. A lie is a lie. Half-truth is a lie. Information warfare, especially bad information warfare, is a lie. And people are going to be held accountable for those actions. The Bible says that every idle word that we speak, yea or nay, we will give an account for. And I promise you we will, including myself. So you better make sure that what you stand on, that you're standing on the right side of history, and that you're standing on the right side of righteousness, because if you're not, there's somebody that knows you better than you. There's somebody that knows what you're going to do before you even know that you're going to do it. And his name begins with a capital G and a capital J and a capital H, called the Holy Spirit. You're not going to be able to pull the wool over God's eyes. You're not going to be able to bamboozle God, even though you're the one that got bamboozled because you was foolish enough to run after these fairy tales.
That he was this figure who was able to put his finger on the pulse of Russian society so effectively, and he had a personality that was big enough to lead what is a very sort of dissipated, fractured sort of opposition.
But you can't lead if the people don't want to be led. That's kind of like Moses. He was sent by God to be a liberator. But it took those people of going through absolutely misery and hell until they was willing to sacrifice some of the few to regain all the above. And I guess that's what it takes before there's an uprising. Is things has got to get so damn desperately bad to the point that people realizes that they don't have nothing else to lose. And I do like that about Donald Trump. Whenever he first started running for office, that's one of the things that he continued to keep telling while he was out there rallying the people, is that what do you have to lose? What do you have to lose? What do you have to lose? Because Donald Trump could foresee that this country was heading down a slippery slope, and it wasn't a small slope, and it wasn't very slowly, but quickly. And all COVID done was just energize it. It increased it 1,000-fold. That's all COVID done. In other words, the things that we're going through right now, we probably wouldn't be going through it right now. It would have probably taken 5, 7, maybe even 10 years from now before it would have caught up with all of us. But eventually it would have caught up with us. So basically all COVID done was help it fester to the top. It accelerated where we are right now, is what COVID done. Now, we have two choices. We can either remain dormant and settle for what we got, and odds are it's going to get worse, or we can actually have a movement to where people takes their hands and gets them from out from underneath their hips and start using their values in a positive way, and allowing for the Holy Spirit, God the Father and God the Son, to lead them and to direct them in the way that this great nation and the planet's supposed to go. And I know a lot of this stuff that I've said, because I'm not an elegant speaker, a lot of people probably are offended in the fact of how that I approach this situation pertaining to this death of this. Basically, he'll be looked upon now as being a martyr, the same way as Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King's looked upon as being a martyr. Jesus Christ is looked upon as being a martyr. Where our government officials were smart enough that they didn't just want to just come right out and martyrize me that way towards killing me, but there's other ways that they can be cruel to you that's actually worse than death. Actually worse than death. And at least, looking at it from a positive perspective, this man's life is no longer in misery.
I think that the strength, though, of his campaign was always the theme that he pursued, which was corruption. If you live in Russia, if you know Russia, you know that corruption is something that touches everybody's life. And Alexei Navalny...
It ain't just in Russia. It's all over. It's right here within arm's throwing distance of where I can look and see. People being dishonest, people telling half-truths, people not being frank, people hiding, people being deceitful, people not wanting, thinking that they're going to live on an island the rest of their lives and ain't nobody going to find out about them or ain't nobody going to find out about their past. They're living in la-la land. They're literally living in la-la land, and the reason why is because the devil has blinded them. He has tricked them. They have been bamboozled. Just like the people over in Russia. They was bamboozled. For whatever reason. They didn't support him. They didn't get in behind him. But that was the things that Putin was scared of. He was afraid that eventually, that if he stayed after it long enough and strong enough, that there would be a movement. And he would have to really fear this guy. So Putin said, you know what? Let's just nip it in the bud. Let's just cut it off. Let's just kill him. Now it's going to be up to the people to memorialize this guy and to memorialize him properly the way that Martin Luther King's people memorialized Martin Luther King, in the way that Martin Luther King was treated cruel and bad.
Seized on that public anger about corruption that cuts through the sort of class divide or the political divide or anything, and talks to almost everybody in Russia, and he used it to turn public anger against the Kremlin. Look, if somebody else comes along and picks up that baton, I'm sure it will be equally as effective. He also leaves behind, of course, not just a legacy of protest, but an organisation which remains, as you mentioned, still focused on exposing official corruption in Russia.
Matthew Chance, good to have you on this story for us today from London. Thank you. Well, earlier, US President Joe Biden told reporters at the White House that he wasn't surprised, but he was outraged by the reports of Navalny's death. And he squarely laid the blame on Vladimir Putin, calling it, quote, yet more proof of Putin's brutality. In his remarks, he paid tribute to Navalny, calling him brave and dedicated, before imploring Congress to step up in this moment.
He was dedicated to building a Russia where the rule of law existed and where it applied to everybody. Navalny believed in that Russia. He knew it was a cause worth fighting for, and obviously even dying for. This tragedy reminds us of the stakes of this moment. We have to provide the funding so Ukraine can keep defending itself against Putin's vicious onslaughts and war crimes. There was a bipartisan Senate vote that passed overwhelmingly in the United States Senate to fund Ukraine. Now, as I've said before, and I mean this in a literal sense, history is watching. History is watching the House of Representatives.
Well, I want to bring in White House reporter Priscilla Alvarez. Good to have you with us, Priscilla. So President Biden certainly didn't mince his words when he blamed Putin for the death of Navalny. But he also, again, urged Congress to push through this military aid for Ukraine, saying, why on earth are they taking a 2-week vacation right now?
He did. He said that very forcefully and saying twice, why take those 2 weeks to leave the Hill and therefore keep this package stalled. And as a reminder to viewers, what he's referring to there is a White House national security...
Because they're not in there for the will of the people. They're in there for themselves. And if they think that they can get a free pass and a free party at the taxpayers' expense, that's what they're going to do. They've seen other politicians do it before them, and they feel like that now they're entitled to do it. That's why. That's why, Mr. Biden. That's why they're doing it. That's why we're trillions of dollars in debt. That's why can't nothing get done up there in the White House.
request that included $60 billion for Ukraine, in addition to other priorities. That was introduced last October, and since then it has remained stalled in Congress. And there has been a steady drumbeat from the White House about the necessity of these funds so to help Ukraine and not cede any ground to Russia. And that's what you are hearing from President Biden today, was taking this moment, this death of Alexei Navalny, and underscoring the stakes of the moment and reminding people why it's so important to make sure that those funds get to Ukraine. So again, not to give any more ground to Russia. And so that was the message from President Biden to the American people in his remarks earlier today. But in addition to that, it was making very clear that it is Russian President Vladimir Putin who is responsible for Alexei Navalny's death over the course of the morning. That had been the resounding message from his top U.S. officials, who had said that there was little room for error here, that this was Putin who had been responsible for this. And back in 2021, President Biden had said that if Alexei Navalny died in prison, there would be consequences for Russia. Now, he was asked about that today, and he said that there have been consequences ever since Russia launched its war into Ukraine, and that there have been sanctions. But the president also said that there will be other options that are reviewed. Now, we don't know exactly what consequence the U.S. will levy against Russia in response to this, but it is clear that White House officials are poring over that now and deciding how to proceed after today.
All right, we'll wait and see what sort of options they might consider. Priscilla Alvarez at the White House, thanks so much. Still to come tonight, it could be a pivotal day for Donald Trump in multiple courtrooms. We'll have live reports from both Georgia and New York next.
Raining again.
We must remember, he didn't grow up formally in New York politics. He grew up selling that he was the Great Gatsby in real life. And that's gone now. I don't care how he sells stuff and makes the bond appeal list and it'll go through the courts. It's scattered now. You have a judge that says, yes, you're a fraud. You have another judge that says, yes, you sexually harassed a woman. And he's facing a trial at the end of next month. Imagine picking a jury when everybody just heard he owes hundreds of millions of dollars and he's a fraud. And he's got to pick a jury in that climate. So I think the brand is gone. Now, politically, the MAGA enthusiasts will be geared up. This will be something for them to rally around. But I think that they will start being diluted in numbers, because how do you put a guy like this in the White House, again, expanding a base of independence?
I'm going to weigh in on what he's saying, and I'm going to let you go. I guarantee you there's Trump flags flying all over this side of Weakley County that probably won't one of them go down, and if anything, there'll be more of them that'll be raised up. What the younger generation is seeing is that the system has in fact failed, okay? And though Donald Trump may not be the angel that really ought to be up there, they're going to look at it towards choosing the lesser of the two evils, and if something needs to be done up at the White House towards draining the swamp, and they're going to be willing to chance it towards maintaining their stance with Donald Trump, even though his brand may be smeared for the rest of his life towards the Trump brand. That's not how the majority of the people is going to look at this. Especially the younger generation that realizes, my God, we have really missed the boat, hadn't we? So they're going to play double time. Rather than them pulling away from him, they'll probably actually pull closer to him. A lot of them will. There may be a few of them that'll pull away from him because of this, but the American people have been lied to so much and bamboozled so much that they're not going to listen to a bunch of commentators on the news. It don't matter if it's from NBC, Fox, ABC, CBS, it don't matter who it is. They're going to go by their gut feeling of knowing that they have been bamboozled, and now their children and their children's children and their possible children are going to have to be the ones to pay the cost of it. We're getting closer and closer to an actual, true revolution. Now, whether or not that revolution starts and fumigates itself in a bloodbath towards a civil war, or rather not, it starts and promulgates itself in a spiritual revolution, that will be up to the people towards what they want. But we're getting closer and closer towards an uprising, and whenever that occurs, usually lots of people get affected, and usually they get affected in a negative way, and we're talking about those who have sat back and gotten fat and become very, very powerful for the past 20, 25, 30 plus years. Because I don't have enough fingers and toes to tell you about the people that has taken advantage of all this, that they themselves has wound up rich, or maybe not rich, but well off. They got them a nice home somewhere. They got them a nice vehicle. You know, their business done pretty good. Their farming industry done pretty good. Or they themselves done pretty good because they crossed all their T's and dotted all their I's, and now they're sitting back on easy street. Once more, they're going to believe that they got away with this. But I know that they haven't. And deep down inside, I think that even they know that they haven't. Even though they may not have worked for Texas Gas for 40 years, like some of the people over in Kenton did, that's got a big nest egg. They're still people that's got real sense, real emotions, real feelings, real ideals that aren't willing to be scared to show them. Good luck to all of us. I want to say God bless America. Good luck to each and every one of us towards this moment of despair that we're in. Pray for the families of this individual that has died, that was in fact another Martin Luther King that now has become a martyr. I want to pray for the movement that now will become 1,000 million trillion times more stronger than what it ever was, providing that the people over in Russia takes the bull by the horns and does the proper and right thing. If not, you can expect more misery versus prosperity. More misery than prosperity. And that's the same way in China. That's the same way in South America, Africa, Mexico, or wherever you live upon this planet. If you're not willing to stand up and do the right thing, odds are the wrong is still going to be dominant. And the wrong don't care about your feelings, or don't care about your bank account, or don't care about your children, or your children's children, or even their children. I promise you, they don't care. Now, they'll tell you that they do. They'll tell you that they do. And you can bite that bullet if you want to, hook, line, and sinker, because that's what they've been doing now for the past 30 plus years. Or you can awaken out of your stupor. God bless America. God bless our troops. And God bless our endeavors. And shalom.